Good evening, mi gente. This is Ray, your host, Ray Collazo, and you're watching and listening to the Founded Translation Bomba Live simulcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Founded Translation is where we have conversations that cross the intersection of politics in our community with culture from a diverse perspective. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we're always bombeando, is that a word? I don't know. It's siempre una bomba aquí in Bomba Live. And later on the show, we're going to have a very special musical guest, a great friend to the show, Luis Espada, who's going to talk to us about his new salsa music that he's coming out. Sigue con la salsa caliente, la salsa dura, sigue la tradición. And very importantly, in a moment, we're gonna have a great conversation with several African American and Latino leaders about what is our agenda in this Biden administration. Yes, we all took a collective swipe of our brow now that menace and that criminals out of the White House. But there's a lot of work to do, particularly in a very divided country, in a divided Congress, and really an ongoing battle for the soul of our country. Again, this is your host, Ray Collazo. Thank you again so much for watching and listening. We encourage you to continue to share with your friends, because this is a very important conversation that we have to keep having here on our show, because if our communities work together, there's nothing we can't do. So when I began thinking about this conversation, I approached one of my great friends in the African-American political community about saying, you know what, I want to begin the new year with these conversations with emerging Black leaders in our community, along with Latino leaders that are a regular part of our show, and just have for real conversations. But I need your help, not only with your voice, my friend, but bringing on very talented, particularly women from our communities that are really the leaders of our communities, to share their perspective on these very important conversations about how Blacks and Latinos move forward with a collective agenda during the Obama administration. Who better than a great friend to the show, the president of DPS Strategies, and as I affectionately like to say, see, I'm a North Philly guy, Kyle Darby. What's up, Kyle?
What's up, Ray? Thanks for having me, man.
Kyle goes way back with the show to the WPPM days, and this is still when we were in the live studio pre-COVID, and this is still a show, of course, still a show you can see every Tuesday, 11 o'clock a.m. Listen to at WPPM 106.5 FM, hashtag People Powered Media in the city that loves you back, Philadelphia. Kyle, before we introduce our very special co-host for today's show. Just something about 2021 just feels a little less stressful, doesn't it?
It does. I feel great. It's Thursday. My birthday is tomorrow, and what a birthday present, but to have the adults back in charge.
Happy birthday to you, my friend. Well, this is a great way to kick it off here. Yeah. And so, Kyle, why don't you do the honors, because you were very passionate that our next guest was someone that had to be part of this conversation about sort of as we start into 2021, building a collective Black and Latino agenda.
So this individual has been a friend, has been a colleague over the last few years. She's instrumental in getting Philadelphia Councilman Isaiah Thomas elected to office. She now serves as his chief of staff, and my good friend's name is Don Miller. So please welcome Don Miller to the show.
Don Miller, welcome to Founded Translation Bomba Live.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to apologize already for not being on camera, but I am super excited to be here and looking forward to this awesome conversation. And thanks, Kyle, so much for inviting me on the show. And you
good to have you, Dom.
Mm-hmm.
Great to have you.
No, not a problem at all, Dom. And of course, this is very special for many levels, because not only are you a great advocate for our community, but you're the chief of staff for Philadelphia Councilman Isaiah Thomas, who I'm proud to say is literally a lifelong friend. His father, Barry Thomas, is one of my uncles, basically. And the councilman, we used to literally, clean baseball fields together in Little League before playing. So Isaiah and I go great back, and really appreciate his leadership and appreciate you, Dom. And we got a lot of fire emojis when we announced you were going to be on the show. Much respect to Monica Parrilla and some of your great local friends in Philadelphia. We wanted to make sure, even though we got 3 Philly heads here, we wanted to make sure we had a national conversation. And particularly because of the executive actions that came out last night, we thought it was critical that we had an emerging leader and a great voice around immigration issues and immigration law, and someone that has her own media platforms, whether it's her podcast or on the Clubhouse or her social media platform, giving people all over the country great information about what's happening in Washington impacting the immigration community. So let's welcome from Abogada Santiago, Cynthia Santiago. Welcome to Bomba Live.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to meet everybody.
No. We appreciate you. And why don't we start with the ladies, Dom? So let's start with you, Dom. So Yesterday was an emotional day on many levels for people, between the messaging around a new day, reflecting on the people that we lost with COVID, the diversity that we saw throughout the last few days as this new administration got ushered. So, Tom, just share your emotions and your reflections on the last 48 hours.
Thank you for asking that. I mean, honestly, I didn't even realize that it meant so much to me until like I turned on CNN, and then you start to see all the limos coming on the screen, and then you start to see all the looks that the ladies have on, and you're like, okay, so we're really about to get a ceremony happening. And as someone who's like, I'm involved in politics for the community side of it, but I also call myself a little bit of a political theorist, so that is kind of like that element, that transition of power that is supposed to be peaceful, no matter we're going for Republican, a Democrat, whatever. Like, to me, that's something that's so beautiful, because no matter what our sides are, we're still adhering, well, we're trying to, at least during this transition, adhering to these systems that have been established for so long. So it was very emotional for me in that sense. And then, like, to add on the fact of Kamala Harris and everybody gets excited when they see Michelle Obama again. So, just seeing all those people again back into the fold, it did give me a lot of comfort. And it was like, okay, like, now let's really get the work done, because I feel like, for the first year of our transition, we really didn't have support from the federal government. And I'm really excited to see like what that actually looks like, is having that support at the federal level.
We went from a horror, a nightmare, a 4-year nightmare. And then yesterday became the Oscars, red carpet. It was unbelievable. The Coke game was unbelievable. It was incredible.
The coat, the matching mask. I mean, and they had on labels too. Like they were giving us like Dior out there. So I was very proud of the Democratic ladies. They showed out for sure.
Fierce game. Much respect to I believe it's Wilbert or Wilfredo Rosado, who was a Puerto Rican jeweler, who's the one that pearled up our new VP. So we were represented on many levels. Of course, the BX was big time represented with Justice Sotomayor and J-Lo. Cynthia, let's go to you, because there's no group in America. Well, there's no reason to argue about that piece, but amongst the groups, and certainly the first group and the one that got hammered the longest and was used as a political scapegoat by the former president now, wow, that's nice to say, was the Latino immigrant community and the immigrant community at large. So Cynthia, just your thoughts not only about this new administration, but the fact that on day one, Joe Biden, President Biden, as he promised, delivered to Congress a framework for the beginnings of a conversation around passing a comprehensive immigration bill. So Cynthia, from your perspective, how was that? How did yesterday play out? And I know you were very busy providing people information analysis on the bill, and we can talk about that. But just what have the last 48 hours meant to you as an immigration lawyer and activist?
It's definitely a sigh of relief, because we're seeing through the website, and every like 10-15 minutes they were posting a new executive order, and in total he signed 17 executive orders, about 5 or 6 of them related to things that were really important in immigration, such as the Muslim ban and getting rid of that Muslim ban, and also getting rid of the border construction wall, and issues with priorities of deportation. And then there was the just reinstating that he's going to support DACA. So these were just things that we kept seeing uploaded on the website, and I had to keep reading all these new orders that were coming in. It was very exciting and very promising for the future of many immigrants in this country, not just Latinos, but so many immigrants that we have in this country.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the messages to your point. That's a great point, Cynthia. I'm glad you brought it up, because one of the messages I want to make sure people come out of this, and I think one of the ongoing conversations, strategic conversations we want to have amongst our leadership, is that we want to make sure that people understand that these aren't competing interests, and that's something that there is such a connection. And Kyle, you've been such a great nationally recognized advocate for criminal justice reform, and the connection between the prison industrial complex that disproportionately imprisons African American males, and the one that targets immigrants, whether they're pregnant, they're kids, they're just seniors that just want to reunite with loved ones on this side of an imaginary line. The overcriminalization of these communities is something that unites us, and we should have a legislative strategy that reflects that. Kyle, besides the fact that you're relieved that Wheezy is free, I know that was a burden on your mind.
Yeah, Wheezy and Kodak Black.
Well, I didn't think you had much. You were worried about Kodak, but yeah, needless to say, he's also free. And as someone that sees, look, although you can't have even though it's Democrats control all three branches, it's basically of the thinnest margins, a very divided presidential electorate, a 50-50 split in the Senate, actually a relatively small majority in the Congress. It'll be interesting to see your thoughts, because the conventional thinking was, well, Biden's going to probably focus on the easier things that don't have like a lens of equity, right? So, maybe work on infrastructure. Obviously, COVID relief helps everybody, but he's been pretty strong, at least in these first 4 to 48 hours, around messaging around equity issues. So, just your thoughts around these first few days, and what do you think this preclude? What's this? How do you think the first 100 days of the administration the clues we're getting now that it may play out?
I'm excited, Ray. To allude to Cynthia's point, I was just as excited as her reading all the updates on the White House site. As I started the show, the adults are back in charge. A commitment to equity, a commitment to restoring common sense and humanity into policymaking. One of the executive orders that was signed, the title, I'll read it for you, is Advancing Racial Equity and Support of Underserved Communities Through Federal Government. And the reason why that was so important is because we can talk about immigration, we could talk about criminal justice reform, we could talk about economic development and the lack thereof. But what a lot of folks don't understand, especially at the government level, and this goes for federal, state, and local, is a lot of the inequities exist in policy, right? So what do I mean by that? How department heads and their staff interact with each other, the policies that they're able to implement or not implement, and the things that they're able to do and the rules that they're confined by actually promote the inequities and the inequality that we have. And this executive order was really, really important because it's focused on removing the systemic barriers that have been holding Black and brown people back for centuries. So I'm excited about the first 100 days. Like I said, I'm just really thrilled that we have someone in the White House that cares about people and is leading with their heart first, and really understands how government works. I think a lot of where we're a little frustrated and a little irritated by Trump was not only his theatrics, but the fact that he just, quite frankly, didn't understand how government worked, and how to really get around some of the red tape. So I'm thrilled, I'm excited, and really looking forward to seeing what this administration does.
Yeah, I want to go back to you, Cynthia, because there's immigration is so complicated, right? Because you have sort of the elements of immigration policy that are perceived as maybe more palatable for bipartisan solutions, right? The dreamers, sort of focusing on younger people, maybe even people that, TPS holders, they're already here, they're already relatively been legalized on some level. But then there's kind of the harder conversations our country has had. What does the path for legalization look like for the 11 million? What does the path to what does border control and our legal immigration policy look like moving forward? So just, Cynthia, any thoughts you have around how you anticipate this process going, and what, from the lens of an immigration attorney that's assisting people that have all individual, very different, distinct immigration stories, what are your hopes for the Biden administration and Congress moving forward around this issue?
Yeah, so I definitely have seen the most extensive bill. He's presenting a lot of thorough information going back to 1996 when the laws were passed that basically criminalize a person entering and exiting the country, gives them like bans to be able to legalize their status. So he's definitely very thorough as to the different levels of barriers that have been created by these laws that have made it very difficult for people to legalize their status. It's not as simple as signing up and getting your papers. It's a very lengthy process of 20, 30 years many times for some countries. So I definitely I like what I see on paper, but I definitely think that there's going to be a lot of controversy with getting bipartisan support on these bills. A lot of the pathways, they also are talking about legalizing about 5 million undocumented individuals that have to pass a background check and have to pass certain requisites of having their taxes filed. And so those are areas where I think there's going to be some controversy as well as to what criminal background is, and dividing as to people who have some criminal background, what is enough, what is, who's going to be excluded out of those conversations as well. And so I think that it's definitely also room for the Black and Brown community to join, because we have seen an over policing of the Black immigrant community, and we've seen a lot of issues in the communities of not only over policing through local police force, but then also through the federal system through ICE and immigration, more denial rates on Black immigrants, higher bond amounts. There's just there's very key points that we can join as a community and to fight this criminalization of the immigrant population, and that goes back to communities that of color. And I think that we got to keep working on these collaborations, on these just getting our voices together and working as a community, because the prison industrial complexes, the immigrant detention centers have grown through this process of criminalizing these communities. So I think that that should be our moment to really link up and really push hard.
I'm so glad, Cynthia, brought that up. And we're talking to a great panel here, Cynthia Santiago, Cal Darby, and we're going to get Don Miller back in this conversation in a moment here on Founding Translation, talking about what the collective Black and Latino agenda during the Biden administration from an advocacy point of view look like. And that's very important because, and it's ironic, going back to my hip hop references, Cal, that the 21 Savage situation sort of brought to light in pop culture and in urban culture the fact that we have a pretty significant, notable Black immigrant population, whether they're from Africa. We have a notable Black African population on our southern border, part of our refugee community. We have Afro-Latinos from Latin America. We have Black Caribbean people. So this is a big part of the story. And oftentimes others try to separate these stories whether it's criminalization of our urban Black youth through the justice system or the immigration system, which disproportionately impacts Black and brown people. It's one story. So this is a collective effort that we need to, and we are excited to see Black members of Congress and even people like Kamala Harris, the daughter of immigrant parents, be a big voice, as well as the Latino members of Congress in the immigration conversation. Dom, I know you're seeing the scourge of COVID locally, Dom, on every level. It's impacting the health of Philadelphians. It's straining our economy, which is straining what's going on in the streets and the tensions. So Don, just your thoughts around, I'd like to hear what you want to see from COVID relief and what we need to see so that we can have a healthier city and healthier economy for all Philadelphians.
No, I think that's a great question, because that I definitely was going to talk about that being what I'm really excited for in the first 100 days, or just even with the new transition. I mean, one thing that we saw was that, last year the cities were kind of left to fend for themselves against COVID. I mean, and most people, and most municipal workers, while they're, good and hardworking employees, are not disease experts. So they were kind of left, as well as the people were left in a very vicarious situation, because just like in former times, the federal government had not provided guidelines, did not provide, the right PPE. They did not provide the right protections that the cities needed. So, I am so excited to see what number one, that release looks like, because, we had so much red tape as it related to relief that we received last year that, it wasn't even truly able to help the people most in need. So, the people most in need didn't even really get to tap into those resources. Like, and the cities weren't even able to use them either to, fill major deficits in our budget that actually affected, massive departments. People were massive departments experienced firing, with waves of firing, just because, that relief could not trickle down there because of the red tape that revolved around it. So, I'm excited to see this. And, we all know that Biden is not new at this. I was telling people the whole entire time, like, he is the only person who literally can say that he has led the country or has been a leader in the country during other pandemic. When you look at Ebola, when you look at, they were on the front lines of that. And granted, it was not the scale of COVID and it didn't spread as fast as COVID, but we did see real federal fight and real federal attention to science during that time. And we would have definitely been in a way, way better situation had we had different leadership at the beginning of this pandemic. So, I'm just excited to see, how they really let that support trickle down to some of our communities. And I'm just excited that now, like, it's literally mandatory that everybody wears a mask. Like, it's a thing. Like, I don't want to hear anybody in Florida, I gotta call it out, saying, like, arguing to their council members, this is the feds. This is real now. So
Well, and the political theatrics and what happened last week can dominate the headlines, but COVID is more spread and we're having more deaths every day than ever. We got Maxwell here chiming in. He's very passionate about these issues. My youngest. Say hi, everybody, Maxwell. So we're going to take a quick break. I want to say shit, but I want to get back to the panel. And I want y'all to think about, when you get back, think about something that you want to message out to the community around what they can do to advocate for the issues that you're all engaged in, whether it's immigration, criminal justice reform, COVID relief, building back our economy. We're going to play a clip from our special Christmas episode. Cynthia, Puerto Ricans, what we do at Christmas is off the chain. Y'all call them posadas, we call them parrandas. And this is a clip from the very special virtual parranda episode that we had a few weeks ago, featuring one of my regular co-hosts and the producer of our yearly Bomba Live Festival, Christina Vega, and one of the hottest IG comedians, Funky Bacalao, with some entertainment from Fabiola Mendez. When we come back, we'll hear back from our great panel about how do we build the true Black and Latino agenda in 2021.
Sí, señor. Llegó su marido. Sí, señor. ¿Y qué le trajo? Un globón. ¿De qué color? Verde limón. Verde limón. ¿Camisa? Tengo camisa. Tengo calzón. La botellita. Tiene tapita. Y el botellón. Me lo bebo yo. Quítale, 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 quítale el tapón. Quítale, 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 quítale el tapón. Quítale el tapón. Quítale el tapón. Eso.
Come on, I'm doing it. We're doing the show for the Puerto Ricans. You see, this is live.
That's hilarious.
That's right. People screaming to be in.
That's right. Evelise, welcome back. Welcome
What's
back.
up, guys? Thank you for inviting me back.
What's up? How are you doing today?
Mira, ya tú sabes, son las climas en Florida. There's no snow, there's no love, there's no heat, pero aquí estamos porque no hay de otra.
I tell you, Funky Bacalao always brings the heat, even during the holidays. And we're actually going to have an episode very soon with her. He has a group of Latino IT comedic stars. So we're going to have a show with that group and have some laughs here on Found in Translation Bomba Live Simulcast. Please continue to bring up your questions. And Doug Chavez, a great friend to the show. He's one of our great progressives. He's taking a breath and excited that we have an adult in the White House. But are we setting the bar really low, don't you think? Wow, Doug Chavez, well, we definitely had a very low bar there. So let's see how high Biden can get over it. And Christina Vega's giving a little love to my background. So, I got to keep it, presidential, Kyle Darby style. So thank you, Christina, always for the shout out. So Christina, I want to go to Cynthia Santiago first, because I know she's got to head to do her own show. So why don't we start with this, Cynthia? Give us some thoughts about what we could do as advocates to move this conversation forward around comprehensive immigration reform, and tell us a little bit about your law firm and your podcast and the kind of services and information you provide with those platforms.
Yeah, so I actually host a TV show that's transmitted nationally called Tribuna Jurídica. It's a Spanish language show where I answer questions live on TV, immigration questions, but I also have a lot of my material and information on my Facebook page, Abogada Santiago, or on Instagram. And I definitely believe that as a community, we should be continue to have these conversations, continuing to advocate with some of the national committees, the national organizations working around these issues. I'm looking at the Black Alliance for Just Immigration. BAJI is a great organization to support. Raices in Texas is also published material on the effects of the immigration and over policing on the Black immigrant community, and they work around also the other immigrant community. So there's just a lot of spaces for us to collaborate and work together and unite in terms of pushing for a equitable immigration reform, something that includes some family members that do have maybe criminal convictions, that we can support as a movement and as a whole, not just separate these families, because we know the effects of the police and of over-policing in communities of color and the higher conviction rates. And so how that affects an immigration process for these individuals is really important that we get to some of those roots and get down to the community where we see the issues sparking. So I definitely, I would say, continue to support these organizations that are doing great work, and also call your Congress members, call your representatives, get them on board to putting these issues at front and center. I know we also are dealing with the pandemic and the effects of the pandemic on essential workers. I know Joaquin Castro has a bill for the meat packers, the farm workers, and trying to secure that they get some type of a temporary status while they're working on the front lines, and we don't have all the protections for them from deportation. So those are things that that I'm looking forward to supporting.
Well, thank you so much. Repeat before you go, Cynthia. Just repeat again your social media and your television show, which and where we can catch all that great content.
The show is in Spanish language. It is called Tribuna Jurídica, and it's on LA TV. And my Facebook page is Abogada Santiago.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Cynthia, really appreciate you. We ended up on a Clubhouse last night, and because I was on to learn great immigration scholars and legal experts like Cynthia about their thoughts about the initial framework. It could be very dense language, and my coworkers at Unidos US, I don't know if you know, Carlos Guevara, was also briefing me this morning around our thoughts on the framework of a bill. And so we're going to continue to work together. So you're going to continue to see Cynthia Santiago engage in these conversations. Thank you, Cynthia. I know you got a mic up for your next television appearance, and we're going to continue to engage you on our show. That was Cynthia Santiago. Thank you so much again for being with us. So Kyle, I want to get you back in this conversation, my friend, because you're one of the few people in America that can say you actually worked on bipartisan legislation with the Trump administration around criminal justice, with the First Step Act on some level. So, but you were part of that movement.
That predates me.
Okay.
But yes, I did work very closely with the folks who helped to implement the First Step Act.
Yeah. So Kyle, from a racial justice perspective, criminal justice reform, policing issues, trying to move that dialogue forward in the country is very difficult because it's tied into a lot of the culture wars going on in our country. So what do you see? What are you looking for? And what do you think as minority activists we should be advocating for to move that conversation forward, not only as a national dialogue, but in policy?
I think equity. I think many of our issues, between the Black and brown communities and the white communities, really is centered around, economics, and, the lack thereof for many Black and brown communities, and the lack of access to education, quality education. I think a lot of these conversations, and really where people grow frustrated and sometimes unfortunately violent, is when there's a severe misunderstanding about the realities of the Black and brown community. Many of the Black and brown communities around the country really just don't have access to quality education. Many of the children that are in schools, mostly public schools, don't have quality books. The teachers are very underpaid, so they're not incentivized to teach in a productive way. A lot of the cases, there's housing issues in these communities where people don't have access to quality housing, affordable housing. You're dealing with communities that, people just don't have capital to start businesses. People don't have access to capital to start businesses. You go to a bank and you don't have, the ability or the credit to get a loan. So many of these issues are centered around economics, the dollar, and the importance of the dollar within these communities is something that I think should be focused on. And I think, as it relates to the Biden administration, really from a federal level, not from a trickle down economic standpoint, but really passing down the importance and really the focus on restoring the access and the equity to the overall economy in the Black and brown community. And one of the things that I think is really, really important for folks if they're going to be supporting some of these initiatives is really understanding how government works, right? So not only calling your congressperson or your senator or your state senator or your assembly member or your representative, understanding what they do for a living, understanding what their jobs are, what they do on a day-to-day, kind of what the bureaucracy is of their job. Because it's very difficult to blame someone when you don't really understand what they do or how they do it or how they're connected and really the position that they sit in that particular legislature or regulatory body. So I think we need a restoration and really a review of our civics and how we haven't paid attention to our civics in many, many years. And it hasn't really been a priority in schools. It's not being taught in schools in the way it was in the 50s and the 60s. So I think people need to get back to the drawing board. I know one of the comments was, do we think that, adults being back in the White House is a low bar? Well, yes. I mean, all of our institutions were in serious threat up until 2 weeks ago, to the point where, we've had to impeach this person twice now. So I think we do have a low bar, yes. And I think it's going to take some time to achieve some of our policy agendas, but you have to go back to the drawing board. We have to return to some sort of normalcy here and really start to understand the intricacies and the complexities of dealing with these issues.
Before I get Dom back in this conversation, I'm really enjoying this conversation with Kyle Darby, Dom Miller. We had immigration lawyer Cynthia Santiago on with us moments ago, and great Salcero and great Philadelphia, great friend will be on later to provide us a musical entertainment, Luis Espada, here on the show. But Don, the devil's in the details, right? Because you can have something like, and I'm just saying as an example, an infrastructure bill, quote unquote, to spur the economy, right? But if all of the infrastructure jobs go to white guy, middle-aged guys in hard hats in the upper North Midwest, is that really building the national economy equitably? And the other part that you just referred to around COVID relief, which was a really challenging piece when the Republicans controlled the White House and the Senate, was our local and state governments need to be replenish fundings that they lost from dealing with all the COVID stuff. So Dom, I know that sort of the details and the intricacies of these policies really impact our local communities quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree. And I really would want to put a point to what Kyle said about really understanding and paying attention to what your local elected officials do. I mean, when you think about the fight, just thinking about the police reform really quickly, some of our state reps, like people who go to Harrisburg, are on the front lines making some really major changes around police reform and are actually under attack right now because people are not completely well informed about what some of the reforms that they're fighting for are trying to do. I mean, for example, you look at Act 111, and Act 111 is literally like the number one barrier that stops us from getting bad officers off the street. And a lot of people see when you want to make changes to Act 111, they believe that's going to be attacking labor. And as Philly, we're a labor city. As you mentioned, we're labor through and through, and that can that can come off negative to some of these state reps. And they could be under a serious attack when really all they're trying to do is make sure that Black people are treated equally by police, and that's just not the way that it's being received. And then you talk about the devil being in the details. I mean, I've been banging this drum with Isaiah, screaming at Isaiah about just how frustrating it is because you have so many council members who come up with legislation that is actually good. It addresses a lot of the issues that we see every day, but it does nothing because the implementation is just not there. There's no follow-up to make sure that those programs actually even work. There's no check to those systems. So you just have these awesome ideas, but they just kind of stop at being ideas, and we really don't get to see the change from that. So that has been probably one of our major issues that really has stopped us from making real serious changes. I literally had a conversation about this yesterday with a group of ladies where it's just that we have to start pushing our departments and pushing the people that serve our citizens to show that they deserve better. And that's just really that's not the narrative right now. When people have to interact with government, they see it as a burden, they see it as a hurdle, and not an experience that they really want to be involved in. And to me, that's so disheartening. Because when you think about what the government is actually supposed to be and how it's supposed to serve people, that should not be, how people see their government at any level. So I know I probably went all over the place with that, but that's just what I see every day. And like you said, like granted, the federal government can have as many awesome things that they want to do, as many great reforms, but if we don't really look down into implementation, if they don't really follow through with implementation, it could just die on the vine and not really do what they wanted to do.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Don, because one of the things that actually was a big point that civil rights activists have been focused on in this racial equity conversation on a national level that actually was included very prominently in Biden's executive order yesterday was this concept of making sure we have accurate data to track the progress and the results of these policies. Mm-hmm. So this happens in criminal justice, and it impacts the Black community, but it really impacts the Latino community. Small example. So oftentimes, when they comment on, well, X amount of white people got, hurt or killed by cops, or X amount of white people got impacted by COVID. A lot of times it's, in a lot of these local municipalities, it's either the cop doesn't mark, because they're the ones doing the police report, either they don't mark the race, or if the person's not obviously a Black person, they list them as white or other, when a lot of times, the cops are roughing up Latinos that they're just happen to list on the form as white. So there's a lot of issues related to minority communities that just, we don't even know the true extent of the inequity because it's not tracked properly. So those are very important issues. I mean, that's why we have a census, is to track what populations will be impacted by different dynamics. Dom, give me another nugget. Philly, I know that so many of the things happening in Philly are hurting your heart, hurting my heart. I think about the food insecurity that's impacting our kids, particularly. That's an issue we're working on a national level with appropriations. But the violence in our streets, and I know we're having among people of color a lot of hard conversations about what do we do about that, and but what are the solutions, because it seems generational. So just Dom, just give us some of your wisdom around, from your perspective, how we should be approaching some of these issues.
That is a huge question. I'm going to start probably from the education piece, just because I literally sat on an 8-hour education hearing this morning. And when you're talking about a lot of the issues that our city faces, it always goes back to education. It starts with our young people. It starts with how we, started training our young people. And, this is another point I made yesterday where it was, how can we say that we're ready to effectively prepare our students for tomorrow's economy, and we can't even run proper public transportation. So like the small details that we are overstepping, that we're overlooking, is also affecting us being able to make bigger change. Like the cyclical effect that we're in right now, that we're seeing, which is poor education, which leads to poverty, which leads to violence, is literally something that needs to be infiltrated at a minute level that people are just not ready to really dive into. And as someone who's just been on the quote unquote other side, because I worked in campaigns for a long time, that is the number one thing that is kind of like, I guess what makes people think that I'm naive, is because like you start asking these questions, like, why do we not have, why are we not tracking this? And why do we not have data on this? And why do we not know how many programs exist for our young people? And why do we not know why these programs are not being funded? Or why do we not know that programs that are actually supporting and turning out results that are protecting our young people, why are they not being supported by the city? And I literally can never get answers for these questions. And like, you would think that these are ridiculous concepts, but it's not. It's just literally trying to look at our government different. And then, when you look at some of our issues around gun violence, that is something that is so near and dear to the councilman's heart, because, a large demographic that we serve are young brown and Black little boys, and that is a major target right now for a lot of the issues that we do see, every single day on our streets. I mean, he's known as a sports guy on council. He's a coach, he's a basketball coach, and he's always banging the drum about, trying to get sports back, and, why that is so important. And some people try to yuck it up to us, just, him just wanting to have sports back for his teams, and, him being the youngest member on council, sometimes that message is not received in the way that it is. But, these people don't understand that is the main way that we have to get these young people off the street and occupy their time and keep them safe. Like, we have to give them better options. And right now, the options that we're giving them are not great. And having worked with you for 10 years, we see that this is the way, and we're fighting this at every single corner. So, I always, I love working with young people. I have so many mentees from people calling me for programs and just young people that I meet and I love to keep in my circle. But like, they're the ones that are struggling right now. Like, they are the ones that are really struggling right now. And that is the one that is the piece that's so disheartening to me. And then, when you and then when you add another level of, not just being poor, not just being Black, but then, or being a person of color, but the language barriers that we're learning about that so many young people are facing right now, and that's not getting addressed is major. So like, there are major gaps for language. There's major gaps in English and writing because of everything that we're seeing in COVID. So our young people at every level are struggling the most. You mentioned food inequality. Young people were going to school to get food, in their pantries. You know what I mean?
Right there.
And in their food pantries, and I love that. But like, it's like, what if they don't have transportation to get to those food pantries? You know what I mean? And it's just like that level of implementation is just not being thought about, and people are really just being left out of the equation. And sadly, our young people are the main ones.
No doubt. Now, I want to, Don, we definitely not only bring you back in these conversations here on Founded Translation, but bring the councilman into the conversations. And Kyle, we need to have a follow up. One of these conversations we need to have a conversation about how do we continue to mentor the young men. And I know that the councilman, he's very passionate about that, because oftentimes, hey, the women need our support too, but there's definitely more of a pipeline of mentorship happening amongst younger women in our community. And the men in our community, we need to step up for our young fellas. So as we start wrapping up this segment, and Kyle, Dom, I'll give you a moment to share your final thoughts. But Kyle, just give us some final thoughts about this issue. I do want to shout out our main man, Dan Lodis, that's watching. Give me my Roman Catholic shout out. So Catholic guys out here, and Dan's another great friend. Kyle, just any other thoughts you have about this conversation? What people who are watching this can do, besides after the show, go watch the verses with Ashanti and with a shot. But what else? Keisha Cole. I don't know. My wife would kill me. That's her. She's Team Keisha all the way. Just any thoughts you have about what people can take out of this conversation? They can take in their daily lives to elevate their voice in advocacy for our communities.
And Dom and I have had many conversations about, just more of the policy and like the real boring, very nuanced stuff, right? But
it's important though.
It is important, but I think when you have conversations like these that are centered around people's lives, and really how policy impacts people's lives, I think it's important to keep it very general, and keep it very palatable for people to understand, people from all walks of life. I think the most important thing to do right now, in terms of making your community better, making your daily life better, is to care. One of the things that Dom and I have spoken about is the food inequity and the food inequality in the city of Philadelphia and around the nation. Why are children going to school hungry and leaving school hungry, right? Well, that has to do with someone not caring, whether it's the school district, parents, neighbors, you name it. I think many of our policy issues are, many of the issues in and of themselves, and the reason why people are in the streets picketing and people are marching on the capitals and things like that is because of the lack of concern, especially for the youth. I think in large part, and this has a lot to do with the technology age, I think a lot of parents have neglected the development, the psychological and mental development of their children, and really caring and putting in the work to ensure that that child has access to food, to a quality education, to, just the daily, walks of life that helps with their experience and building quality character. Especially with the youth. And I have to go back to Isaiah and Dom, because I think Councilman Thomas is doing an incredible job with this and has for years. I actually visited one of his basketball practices. I used to play basketball in the past, and I've seen him in action, and how he deals with children and teenage boys specifically, and the level of care that he brings, not as a politician, not as, a basketball coach, but as a person to these teenage boys, is something that I just truly, it's enjoyable to see. And it's something that I want to see more from our public officials, from our leaders, from our community leaders, from parents, all down the line. Just more care about the youth, more care about your community as it stands, and more care about the issues that actually impact you and your family and your neighbors and your family, abroad. So I can't stress that enough. Care is the most important thing. We can talk about politics till we're blue in the face, but without care, our politics is dead in the water.
No, and believing and seeing that your elected officials are fighting for you, and that empathy that they have for what's going on here on the streets. And like I said, we don't talk enough in this country about the fact that a lot of our children are going to bed hungry, much less the adults are going to bed hungry. And in a country with the resource that we have, that should never happen.
Yep.
No question about it.
Yep.
The great thing about Kyle, and it's easy to follow because he has not only one of the best handles in the game, but he's got two. You can follow Kyle Darby on Twitter at KD_CEO1. Not bad. But his IG is even better, at Worldwide Darb. So you got to know about the hoops to really know about that. But Kyle, appreciate you. And Dom, any final words for our audience about what they can do to stay involved, particularly if they're in Philadelphia?
I would just say, tell people to continue to pay attention and that, to reach out to your local elected officials. I mean, there are people on the other end of those emails and phone calls. I know I'm one of them. And actually, Dan, who you shouted out, is actually on my staff as well. He's my legislative director. So Dan is on those other end of those calls as well. And I'm gonna spin off what Kyle said too, is that I want people to know that there are people in their local government that still care. People who are actually still fighting for them. I'm Philly resident, born and raised here. I left Philly. I came back because I love my city. And I work every day because I care about making the lives of the members of this city better. And I feel like people don't hear that enough from their elected representatives. But I think that is a message I really want people to take away with. And I was browsing through the comments, and I don't want anybody to think just because we're excited for the transition that we're not going to hold them accountable.
Right.
That's why we're here.
I'm gonna be frank. I was a Elizabeth Warren delegate. So I'm not, and I never tell people that I'm not. But I was happy. When Biden got the nomination, I was happy that we won. But they still have a lot to prove. They have a lot to show, and they're not just going to get the excitement. They're not just going to get the support right off the bat. People are just happy that real electeds are back in office, but they still have a lot to prove. So I mean, I'll be watching, I'll be looking, and I'm just excited to see what they'll be able to do. So I'll stop right there.
No question about it.
The same, easy, just Dom Miller. Feel free to follow me.
That's what's up. So in your honor, Dom, as we wrap this segment, we're going to play a clip from a previous episode where an incredible Latina diva, Heidi Rosa, blew everyone off the stage. So enjoy this song, and then we're going to bring an artist with some new salsa music from Philadelphia, a great friend, Luisa, onto the show. Kyle Darby, Dom Miller, previously Cynthia Santiago. Thank you for joining the show, and you'll be back very soon. Thank you. This is as important conversations as we can have in our country. Thank you both for your service, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you so much.
My strength, my God, my love, my life, you're all I need to get me through the darkest night. My peace, I 'cause I know you'll never leave my side. Broken and confused, nothing left to lose. Oh, I just feel like there's no close. I'm sure it's all over now, until I think of you.
Heidi Rosa, that was so beautiful. Luis Espada, wasn't that beautiful? Luis Espada.
Hey, what's going on here? Yeah, what's going on?
Gotta keep on your toes, my man. Good to see you.
It's been a while. Good to see you too, man.
Well, let me tell you something. One of the things that I like to do with the show, particularly with our musical guests and our artists, entertainers, put a smile on people's face. And Luis, we've been homies for a long time, especially our Philly people. Everybody in Philly know Luis. And that, when I saw that you were taking this leap into another part of your journey, brother, into music, I wanted to have you on the show. So let's start with this, Luis. Let's get right into it.
Sure.
So, maybe I missed something, but, in our relationship, I always knew you was like an IT guy, background guy. And all of a sudden, I see you out here singing, playing, making videos, and bringing back La Salsa Buena, from our culture. So Tell us about this journey to and now your new venture into music.
Absolutely, man. I'm gonna play a little bit of music in the background if you don't mind. Can you hear that?
Seguro que sí. Yeah. Put it up, brother. Let's hear it.
You hear that?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, so just put a little bit of background music. I did a little medley loop so that, you know, while we're talking, we can have a little bit music in the background. So, yeah, I started this journey, you know, ever since I was young. You know, I was always into music, just like all of us. You know, Latinos, we grow up, you know, we're either washing the car, we clean the house, we always got music in us, right? So, but I started really early. You know, I started playing like, you know, congas, timbales, things like that. You know, I even went to school, you know, throughout my years, but I never, you know, really explored and, you know, taking it to another step further into, you know, into the world and for them to listen to what I'm doing now. So, you know, since, like you said, I'm from IT, you know, so I went from IT and designing, you know, so I was always in the creative side of things, you know, and having the music in me all the time, I said, it's time to let it out, right? Because, you know, the whole pandemic, you know, changed a lot of people, adjusted people. And during the pandemic is where I took advantage of, you know, let me take all this out and put it into music, right? So that the world can listen to it, right? So that's how I got there in a nutshell. You know, if you want to get into specifics, we can do that. But overall, that's what intrigued me to, you know, just make the music and just put it out there and see what happens.
I'm really curious about your process, man, because you know, my youngest brother, Mario Collazo, now his sons have, you know, he's been in the hip hop game for decades and traveled the world and produced 4 full-length CDs and everything. That, you know, and I love to pick his brain and other people in hip hop around your process around when do you think you're ready? You know what I mean? Because there's one thing to mess around at home and, you know, karaoke and all that, but it's one thing to be ready to where you feel comfortable enough to go into a studio and produce a hip hop track, right? But in your case, you not only have to feel prepared with the production and your voice and lyrics, but you know, it's salsa music. When I get that, it's with a band. So you got to organize, you know, a whole group of people.
Yeah.
So tell us about that process and how did you feel like, all right, this is now the time where I feel like I could bring this together to release my own music?
Yeah. So when you're ready, you're never ready until you do it. Just do it, right? So that's the, you know, recommendation I give is just do it, right? Because, you know, like you mentioned, I'm here in my studio right behind me. You know, it's my office. Where you're looking at me now is where I do my design work and my IT work, and right behind me is all the music, so I can have the best of both worlds. But you know, you just go ahead and do it, you know, because when I did my first release, you know, I was ready because I wrote that song like in November 2018. You know, I was playing around with it all in, you know, 2019. I was like, I got to get this out there. I can't just let it sit there and just go to waste, right? So you just got to go out there and just do it. You know, so when I felt I was ready, I did a lot of practicing, you know, making sure all the tweaks were there. And, you know, originally I was only going to do the music, right? And put the band together and form a band and do the sing and have somebody else do the singing, right? So I had a buddy of mine, Victor Negron. I would meet with him every Tuesday and we would sit and talk about music, talk about life, we talk about music. And he's like, you got to figure out what you're going to do. You're going to have somebody else sing it or you're going to sing it. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can do that. You know, I don't know if I'm ready, right? You know, I don't know if I'm ready, you know. Yeah. But he said, I think you got it, you know. I think you got it. You know, maybe you fine tune your vocals, fine tune your song, and have a couple of people listen to it, you know, that would give you, you know, constructive criticism and saying, yes, it's good, no, it's bad, you know, maybe you want to change this, maybe you want to do that, you know, and that process happened because, you know, the way I create a song, it's like, you know, it's a love song, but they, you know, some of the professionals are saying, hey, we want to commercialize this song, right, where it fits everybody, right? I said, yeah, well, that's what I want to do, right? I want to commercialize it and make sure that everybody enjoys the song, right? Young, old, or you know, whoever enjoys, you know, salsa music or Latin music. So I did that. So I just went out there and say, look, let's take it to a producer and see what happens, you know. I did all the arrangements on my first release, well, all my releases, all my songs, I compose it, I do the arrangements, I do like a demo, a sample, I do it all keyboard, bass, electronic, you know, I do it all from start to finish. I even do the cuts, you know, I have congas, you see a conga over there,
yeah,
bongos over there, you know, I do all my cuts all there and I record it here as a demo. take it to the producer and saying, this is what I want. And they refine it, man. They kind of like take it to the next level, right? They just take what I have and just take it to the next level and just, you know, it beefs up the song. They add the bass to it, they mix it, they tweak it, and they master it, and it's ready to go, right? Because, you know, it's just a lot of practice. So it comes to a point you know internally saying, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah.
When you go out there and you're like, all right, I'm ready, but you're not prepared, and you're not ready, right? So that's how I look. That's how I approach it. And that's how I conduct my process of doing, creating from compose. Sometimes when I create a song, it's the lyrics first. Sometimes I create a song, it's the music first. There's no right or wrong, right? You know, it's just when you put it all together and you're saying it's ready. Because what's going to happen is what I put together here at home could change at any point. It can change during the production. You know, the musician might add a little, you know, little tweak in there or a little cut there. That's like, oh, I like that. You know what?
That's part of the creative process. Yeah,
it's a process, and it evolves till you get your final. Once you get your final and you approve it, and you're like, this is great. All right, let's go get it mixed, masterized, and get it ready for distribution. So
we're talking to Luis Espada about his salsa musical journey, and we're in a moment we're going to play a clip of his music as we finish up the show. Luis, you can put that loop on again so we can hear some of it while we're finishing.
Yeah, you know what? It's an infinite loop. I'm going to put it there so we can.
Yeah, so we can finish that conversation. I like listening to it. One of the things I was impressed about your music was, you know, salsa's going through a lot of different eras, right? So that's, you know, salsa vieja, you know, the 80s balada era, the sort of newer generations of Mark Anthony and other soneros.
Yeah.
But with your salsa, I can't really pin it. You know, it kind of has influences from all of those eras. Right. So why don't you talk to us about your sal y su estilo de salsa?
Yeah, so my style it's emotional, right? So whatever I feel at the moment when I'm writing it, when I'm composing it, or when I'm creating the arrangements, I don't want it to be the typical salsa, you know? So it has a lot of influence of maybe hip hop, you know, like Tu Calor is like it's urban salsa, right? So it's an urban salsa. It's easy to understand. I write lyrics so you can easily sing it along and understand, you know, Tu calor, me falta tu calor, right? You know, I even got my granddaughter singing that, you know, and that's the hook, right? So a song, of course, is always about the hook, right? But I also wanted for it to be stylish, like you mentioned, like back in the 90s, la salsa romántica, and you got salsa dura, you got all these different types of salsa, right? I said, how can I incorporate all that in there, right? I want it to be a love song. I want it to have a smooth hook, a nice hook, but it's like the salsa is still bailable, you know what I mean? You can dance to it, you can feel it. You're like, wow, it's different style. So I try to switch things up a little bit so that, you know, it's not the typical pattern, right? You know, there's some other songs that I have that are coming out. It's not your typical pattern. You know, I might start with a coro, you know, and then do a verse and then go right into the mambo, right? Or, you know, you can go into a nice intro, a verse, you know, a bridge or a hook, verse, and then out to a mambo, you know. I don't want to continuously do those typical patterns. I want to switch it up a little bit. So I feel that I'm trying to come up with my sound and so forth, you know. There might be different flavors because I'm still trying to figure out what that sound is, you know. Tu calor is like a urban salsa, but it's, you know, it's about love and emotions and feelings. And they have another one that says no responde, you know. In real life, you know, I'm trying to reach this girl and she's not getting back to me. What's going on, you know? So it's kind of like urban life or what's really going on in the world today. Again, very simple, easy to follow, easy to understand. And then la música por dentro is more like, you know what? I'm going to put a little more salsa dura in here where it's more danceable, right? Because this is what I feel right now, right? This is what I'm feeling. And I want to express it, right? I want to express it to you, to the world. I want to express what I'm feeling about the music that I'm creating today. So,
well, Luis, brother, you know, it's so, first of all, it's good music and it's great to have fresh salsa to listen to. We need more of it for sure. And, you know, the other thing is that, man, you know, I think it's very inspirational because, you know, this is another step in your journey. And so many times people feel like, you know, you're still a young guy, but look, you're a granddad, you know,
I'm a young granddad.
Young as we used to be, and a lot of times people say, those are my dreams from, I can't do it anymore. And I even think about, what am I pursuing here? But you know what? You got to go for your dreams. There's a reason.
Right.
It's in your heart, and you got to express yourself. And so I'm just really proud of the fact that you're going for it. And one of the great things about listening, getting to know your music over the last few weeks, preparing for this interview, was that you could see even within the last year and a half your evolution as an artist. And I'm excited about what's next for you, because I can see from these tracks that you've done that you have so much more. There's so much more in you, because each song is very different.
Yeah.
So I'm just really excited about that. Luis, before we play a clip of the show as we wrap up the show, and I appreciate you coming on, bro, and you're my brother, is that let people know where they can find you, support your work, and anything else you want to share with our Bomba Live Found in Translation community.
Oh yes, absolutely. Thanks to everyone who's listening. Thank you for jumping on the show here at Bomba Live. You can find me on luisespadamusic.com. You see my poster back there, my logo. The camera's in reverse, so I have to do that.
Sharp logo, man.
Yeah, so I designed my logo as well, because I'm like Clark Kent, right? During the day I'm a designer, and then at night I'm doing music. I'm Superman.
Yeah, I can relate.
So yeah, you can find me on social media, Luis Espada Music, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, my YouTube channel. You can find all my songs there as well. So there you go, there it is. So you can go there and you can play the clip. Just to give you a little backdrop of Tu Calor. Tu Calor was the inspiration of my wife, right? So yeah, that's a little promo there, but I know you gotta play the whole video, but it's inspiration, for my wife. And then it's also inspiration of, that song from Eddie Santiago, Tú me quemas, right?
Say a little, yeah.
Me quemas, right? Cuando tú me quemas, tú me das tu calor. So that's kind of like how I put this song together, with the inspiration of my wife and the inspiration of that song. So.
Well, Luis, brother, I'm proud of you. I've enjoyed, I'm enjoying the music. Like I said, it's very important que sigamos con la salsa, and it's interesting because, the salsa scene is that there's so many other places in South America, Peru, Chile, Japón, that they're producing a lot of great salsa now. And Puerto Ricans, we're not, we still have our legends, but the new generation is falling a little behind. And, look, we love the reggaeton and the música urbana and all the other great music that our community produces. But, la salsa es el corazón. That's the soul of our music. So the fact that you're keeping it alive, brother, I really appreciate it, brother. Follow Luis Espada on all social media, support him, download his music. And Luis, you'll be back on the show very soon. I do need a new theme, some theme music for my show, brother. So we need to collaborate.
Hey, I'll do some jingles, whatever you need, man. We got a little studio right here. I can create jingles, intros, whatever you want, man. Let me know.
I promise my audience, though, I'm not going to become a reggaeton artist. That's not going to happen. I leave the rapping to my brother and his crew. Luis, thank you so much, Pop. You know how we roll, and let's end the show. And I want to thank, of course, Kyle, Cynthia, and Dom for being on the show and have a very substantive conversation about how we bring our communities together. And I think it's very appropriate that Luis, with this wonderful Afro-Latino Caribbean music our community produces, finishes up with his newest song, Tu Calor. Cuídate, papa. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. You got it, man. Thank you.
Y me hace falta tu calor.
Hola mi gente, te habla Luis Espada y quiero que escuches Tu Calor, disponible pronto.
Y me hace falta